Friday. I think I missed the day, but it's not pointing running like hell. We've got all the time in the world. Take my hand and trail along till the day is down. Take my hand and trail along till the day is down. A lazy man, I am a lazy man. It means I've got the time. A lazy man, I am a lazy man. It means I've got the time. I watch my clock, says 6:29. I've missed the train, I've missed the bus. There's nobody left in my place. I see the cars running wild. I know I crashed mine once or twice. Take my hand.
Seconds. Twenty seconds. 10 seconds. 5 seconds.
In your face, all over the place. We're online 24/7. 24/7. You're listening to the hottest internet station
from beautiful Saline in southeastern Michigan.
Around the world at sunskyMysteries.com.
This is the 2009 Top 10 Webcam in the World winner. This is SETV.
Well, good evening, everybody. I assume everybody can hear me. Okay, there we go. I'm looking at the microphone levels and everything is okay. Welcome to yet another exciting episode of Surrounded by Idiots. Tonight, we have a very special guest with us. He is a retired member of the military. His forte is in the recon department. He is on the phone with us right now. His name is Erv. Erv, how are you doing tonight?
Outstanding.
Excellent. I can actually hear you over the air. That makes me very happy. Erv is not only an expert at surviving in the wilderness, what to do in a bug-out situation, all kinds of emergencies, but he is also a highly accomplished musician. And we are going to begin featuring his music on all of our pre-show streams. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to put Erv's website address for his music up on the screen right now, and there you go. Now everybody can watch. There's his website address. It is, what is it, Erv? It's Reverb Nation.
ReverbNation.com/diffuser, I believe is what it is.
Okay, and the name of the band is Diffuser, is that right?
Yep, with one F. Not like the hairdo, but something cool and masculine instead.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. Well, when people...
I was going to use Ted Nugent, but that one was already taken.
Yeah. Well, when people watch the stream before the show and everything, they're going to start hearing Diffuser music. We'll have a nice link up for everybody.
Awesome.
Okay.
Awesome.
Let's get into our... let's see here. Let's go over here to our images. And we are going to go ahead and start taking a look at the images that Erv has very kindly provided for us. And we're going to go through some situations. And Erv is going to tell us exactly what to do in those particular situations when you're faced with an emergency. a situation that you may not survive. And your survival is very important because without you, you wouldn't be able to watch the show. So we want you to survive. Let's go with one scenario, one thing that's probably going to be coming up this winter, and that is, well, they're telling me to move to the right. There we go. Apparently people can't see me on the camera. The first situation I want to talk about is in the wintertime when you're driving down, say, a rural highway, 2-lane blacktop, and you either get stuck, your car gets broke down, it's the middle of the winter, or you get caught in one of those blizzards on the highway, and you're stranded for a couple of days. Obviously, people should have things packed in their vehicle for this time of the year, for what we're coming up with now. So I'm going to turn it over to Erv, and he's going to tell us what we should pack for an emergency in our vehicles to be able to survive being stranded in the wintertime. Take it away, Erv.
All right. There's 5 things we need to talk about first. But before we even talk about those 5 things that you kind of need to keep you alive there, the first thing is the will to live, or a good survival mindset. Because without that, you're not going to get anywhere. You've got to have that state of mind that's going to push you to survive, because it's going to get real crappy before it gets better. And it's real easy just to lay down and close your eyes and take that nap that's going to lead you to the ground. Then I have 5 considerations when making kits or preparations for survival. And there's a little silly rhyme that I was taught at Sears School in Brunswick, Maine years ago. But it's basically FFWSS. And the little saying I use is fast friends with silly sidekicks. And what those letters stand for is, the first F is fire, the second F is food, the W is water, the S is shelter, and the other S is signal. Now, you don't necessarily have to have these items, but you have to have something that will help you make these items. So, at a minimum, I would suggest, no matter what situation we're looking at, on your person always, unless you're getting in a plane and, worry about TSA patting you down there, you need a knife on you, some kind of pocket knife or a folding knife or something like that. Some type of fire starter, be it matches, a cigarette lighter, or a little flint magnesium fire starter like you get at Walmart or somewhere. And then the third thing...
Let me interrupt you just for a second. I happen to have my magnesium fire starter right here in front of me.
Sure.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and make a couple of strikes on this magnesium fire starter so people can see what this is. This is just...
Sure.
It looks like a little aluminum block, and it has a strip of magnesium and whatnot on here. What you do is you scrape off some of this magnesium, you put it in a little pile, and magnesium is flammable. And then you take the flint that's on here, you scrape on this flint, you can see the sparks coming off of it right now, you scrape on the flint in that little pile of magnesium, and it starts a fire. It's like a flare. It's like what fighter planes drop out the back of them. You've probably seen that on the news or something like that, where they're dropping flares. Those are made out of magnesium. It's the same principle. So you can use these little things, and they're not that expensive. They're only a couple of bucks, right, Erv?
Yeah. You can get them anywhere from $2 to probably $5 at Army Surplus. Walmart has them, Costco, G.I. Joe's, REI. Every type of store that has outdoor items has these things. And like you said, one side, the little block itself is completely made out of magnesium, and it burns super hot, which means it'll start a fire pretty quick. And the other side is the flint. Now, what you don't want to do, you don't want to take the blade of your knife to start the fire with. Use the back side or use something else. You need a piece of steel to run down that thing, but you don't want to run the blade of your knife down because it'll dull the crap out of your knife.
Okay? That's
and then
very good information.
Go ahead. Sure. And then the third thing I would keep in my pocket is some kind of cordage. And what I mean by that is some string. What I carry in my pocket is 10 feet of 550 cord. It's the military type parachute cord, and basically what that is, it's got 7 small white strands inside a green or whatever color sheath. So you've not only got that 10 foot of the cord itself, but if you strip the inside out of it, now you've got 8 cords, because you got the outside sheath, plus you've got, you know, the 7 inner cords, and then they can be even stripped down to smaller ones if you want to sew or anything like that. So now that we know what needs to be in our pocket, I'm going to flip my notes over here and talk about being stuck in the car like I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest thing we need to do when it's real cold out is we've got to stay warm. So one of the first things you're going to have to look at is the shelter. In your fast friends with silly sidekicks, you got to take shelter first, because like you had said in earlier in some of your notes, and I put in my notes, there's a rule of threes. You can go 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So as long as we can breathe, we don't have to worry about that one. We've got 3 more days till we got to find water, and 3 weeks till we got to find food. So we'll go to shelter. Your car itself is a shelter. So to abandon the car and go walking without the proper equipment is not a very good idea. So you have to figure out ways that you can turn that car into a shelter. Now, if you had packed your stuff properly inside the car, you would have something to keep warm with, like blankets, or a 0-degree sleeping bag will fit right there in your trunk, and it'll keep you warm. I would keep a jacket in your car with a beanie, you know, like a wool or a polypropylene beanie in your pocket, or fleece, a pair of gloves, and a scarf, because you can cover yourself up good like that, and then you can retain that heat. 20% of the heat loss goes out your head, so a hat is a good idea, or maybe a hood on your jacket. You know, if you've got a ski type jacket.
What type of hat would you advise?
I've just got a little fleece beanie hat, you know, the kind of the little watch hat, or toboggan hat's what we called them when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm.
The little ball that goes on top is optional. You don't really need to have that, I don't guess. You can start a fire with that.
Yeah, you could. I'm seeing in one of your images that you sent us, there's one image that has the photo of the knife you're cording. It's got the flint fire starter, and it looks like you've got a Mylar space blanket in there.
There's a Mylar space blanket, and those are real good. But the Mylar space blanket is basically a vapor barrier. When you're talking about surviving in the cold, you need some type of vapor barrier, and all that does is keeps the moisture inside, because moist air is warmer than dry air is.
Right. Pardon me.
So you want to create that vapor barrier around yourself. I mean, if it came down to it and your feet are freezing and you had some Ziploc bags or trash bag, you can wrap your feet in that trash bag and stick it back in your shoes, and your feet will stay a hell of a lot warmer, you know.
Right.
So a Mylar bag, that's a good idea, you know.
As a matter of fact,
any type of just cheap poncho would be fine as well. You know, they're just plastic, like the really cheap ones you get at Walmart that are 99 cents.
Right.
They're clear, you know, it's basically a trash bag big enough to put over your head. Those things are just fine, you know. You can roll up in that and stay warm.
Yeah, I have the first aid kit that I have, our paramedic kit, is from a Canadian Pacific Railroad train, a locomotive. And that came with a bunch of Mylar blankets and whatnot in it. And those are really good, folks. You can get those real cheap on eBay or on
Amazon. You can buy like 10 for $5 or something. They're super cheap.
Yeah, they're very cheap. You can also if you get the Mylar bags, you can store your survival food in it too.
Sure.
Yep. Okay, so we've got the. Want to make sure that we have a knife with us. Some cordage, your magnesium fire starter so you can start fires. Way to keep moisture in. Jacket, hat. What else? What type of emergency food rations would you keep in a car? in case you're stuck out there for a couple of days, that and water.
Now, you can put all kinds of stuff. Just keep in mind, if you're going to put canned food in there, number one, it's not very good when it's frozen. It's not very easy to eat either.
Yes.
And it's even harder to get open if all you got is a knife. You know, the little P-38 military can openers are great because they're small and they can go in a kit real easy, and you don't have to have a separate knife. Or if if the knife you have is a Gerber tool, most of those have a can opener on them. So that's good. What I use as my survival chow, though, is I went on to eBay. Actually, I was looking for Myoplex, strawberry Myoplex. Somebody had suggested I use that as survival food.
That would have been me.
That's right, it was you.
Yes, it
and,
was.
While I was buying up all my Myoplex to drink every day, I stumbled upon a box. I believe it was 100 power bars, or 110 power bars, and I paid $35 shipped from eBay. And I got those out of a joint in California. You just have to look around. But they were all, each one of those bars has 20 grams of protein, and that's what you really need, protein. And really what you need is fat, Condensed chicken noodle soup would be real good, because the fat keeps you warm when it's freezing out. But those power bars are awesome because they're in such a small package, and you don't have to have anything special to open them.
As a matter of fact,
so what I have in my
hang
car...
on for a second. I will have a photograph of the power bars right here on the screen for everybody to see. And you can see right here, right at the Power Bar store, manufacturer, they have $32.99, I believe, for a case of power bars right at their website. You can see that right there. That is thepowerbarstore.com.
Cool.
So there you go. So what about the Coast Guard survival rations? Are those any good?
They taste like crap. They are very good for you. They have a lot of carbohydrates in them.
Okay.
I have had to eat those things to stay alive a few times, and it's basically tastes like a little bar full of sawdust with maybe a hint of sugar in it. So they're not very tasty.
Okay.
The tastier, the better, because you're not going to want to eat anyway when you're not feeling good and things look rough,
Mm-hmm.
So you want something that's going to be fairly tasty.
You might as well have good food if you're going to be stuck out in the middle of nowhere for a long time.
That's right. And you got to remember, don't just have one per meal, because when you're burning calories like you do when it's cold outside and your body's trying to stay warm, you're going to have to eat a lot more. So maybe five or six meals a day is what you got to think, or 5 or 6 bars a day if you're, and then plan for maybe 72 hours of being in the vehicle before. Hopefully somebody comes and finds you. If nobody finds you and you're starting to run out of stuff, you're going to have to come up with a separate plan, You also want to have some bottled water in your car. Just, some of the stuff you get at Walgreens, whatever's the cheapest, because really it's just water in a bottle, or just, it needs to be smaller bottles, though, in case it freezes and you've got to be able to thaw it out. If you have it in a 2-liter bottle and it's frozen, it's going to be a while before you get that thing thawed out if all you got your body heat, to warm it up.
So you want a smaller bottle of water then?
Sure, just the little ones. The single serving size would be good. Because if all else fails, you can take those and stick them inside your jacket. You might go hypothermic from doing it, But it's better if you can catch them while they're still fluid, then stick them in there. That way you're not freezing to death trying to thaw them out,
Right. So that's something you should probably keep in the interior of the car.
Yeah, you can, underneath your seat, you could probably put 4 or 5 of them. Just make sure you tape them or something so they're not rolling under your feet when you're trying to drive.
Yeah.
And how do I know that? Because I got all kinds of crap under my seats right now, all kinds of survival stuff, and it has a tendency to pop out at the most inopportune times when you're trying to hit the brakes or something.
Right. There's a note from a survival expert. Make sure your survival crap doesn't get caught underneath your pedals.
Yep. All right.
All right. Now, if
go ahead.
Go ahead. No, you go ahead. You got the floor.
I was going to say, as far as fire goes, the bad thing about cigarette lighters, especially in the cold areas, either the butane inside them condenses, which shrinks due to the cold weather, and it won't come out, or if you're at higher altitudes and you've got it somewhere and it accidentally pushes that little lever, it expands it expends all the butane out of it, and then you don't have something. So the little magnesium thing, you can't say enough about that.
Those things.
What you might also want to keep in there, though, is something like a tea lights, the little candles.
Right.
Just a tiny tea. Let's say your car was stuck in the snow, and it just keeps snowing on top of the car.
Right.
Your car just became an igloo, and it's very, very insulated at this point if it's totally covered in snow. So one little tea light will last you quite a while. Now, what you're going to have to do is if you light a fire car, you're going to have to crack the window a little bit, and you probably would not be a good idea to go to sleep with the fire lit in your car. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. You want to make sure you have the window lit in order to supply a good supply of oxygen.
Sure, and if you're, if it's snowing out and your window's covered in snow, crack it and take, a straw, a pencil or something and just stick it out there and try to do that in both sides just to crack so it's drawing air through, and it can pull that smoke and carbon dioxide out.
Now, what about signaling rescuers?
Okay. The best way to signal a rescuer is your car has...
Assuming that you're stuck on the highway, you've been there for a day or so, now your car is completely covered, so you got that nice igloo that's all insulated and everything, you got power bars and water and everything.
Sure.
What should you do? As soon as you get stranded out there on the highway, presumably there's going to be a bunch of other people there too, but that may not be. You may be in a rural section. What should you do before your car gets completely covered with snow?
Well, you can mark it by the military's got these things called marker panels, and they're so when the aircraft is flying over and you're having them come in and bomb people, you can put it over your position and they won't drop a bomb on you.
Okay.
But you can find those things that go on your windshield. Those are real good. You can also put your hood up, but the bad thing about putting your hood up, it also allows more cold air to come to the cabin of the car.
Right.
But you can put your hood up and put a panel marker on it, or just put your hood up and let people know that you're broken down. Now, if you put your hazards on, your hazards are only going to last as long as your battery stays, working. And the colder it is, the faster your battery drains. So that's up to you whether you want to do that or not. If you've got gas in your car, you can use a heater, for as long as that's going to go. I would just use it in spurts. That way you're not burning it all up at once. But you've also got this thing called a spare tire.
Right.
And you should see that thing burn. If you can get it to burn, when it does burn, there's nothing in the world that looks like tire smoke. You can see that stuff from a long ways off. Even in cloudy or snowy weather, a blizzard, you can see that black smoke. So if you can figure out, bring some type of fuel, a small bottle of Coleman fuel or something like that, and just pour it on the tire outside and light that sucker up, that's a pretty good signal fire right there.
Right. And, of course, I imagine you probably want to wait until you start hearing the National Guard helicopters before you light that fire.
Might be good. Or if you know that you're about to have to start walking on foot because you're out of everything, I'd light that sucker up and I just, try to stand upwind from it because you're going to choke like crazy if you're, downwind of it. But stand there and at least absorb the warmth until it's gone and then start hoofing it,
Yeah.
Now, talking about signal, there's some other things you can do as signal, too. If it's snowing real heavily, this is not a very good idea, but you can also, if you've got a small shovel or you can just walk with your feet, you can write stuff in the snow or draw a big arrow or all kinds of things, Another thing you can do is if there's woods around, you can drag up dead limbs and make a giant arrow in the direction that you're going to walk off in.
Okay.
And the NATO or the universal SOS size for that is 14 feet by 2 feet wide and then by 2 feet tall. That way it sticks up and you can see it from an aircraft flying over.
Okay.
And you always put, if you are going to put an arrow, you always put it in the direction that you're going. That way they can fly in that direction and look for you.
That actually ties in with the next subject that I wanted to discuss, and that would be you're on a hike out in the woods.
Sure.
And all of a sudden you're lost. You're turned around. You got no idea where you are. You're stuck. There's no cell phone coverage. You're basically screwed at this point.
Well, if you think anybody's ever going to come looking for you, same deal with the car. You want to stay where you're at, because it's easier for them to find you if they know where you eventually or where you initially got lost. If you walk for 4 days and just walk in circles or whatever, chances are they're not going to find you, you know. So, you know, stay where you are is probably the first thing I would say. Now, that doesn't mean just stop and freeze in your tracks and not move the whole rest of the time, you know. But you can just do you know, wherever you were at, maybe take a piece of paper out and stick it in a tree or something so you can identify it. Right. And then kind of walk around the big circle and try to find a suitable place to hole up for the night or a few nights or whatever. And then going back to that same situation, depending on what the weather is, you're going to want to have to build some shelter. And you can, you know, there's a bunch of different things you can do. You can build a lean-to. If you've got that Mylar blanket in your pocket, you can use that to build a lean-to with, you know. You just take a good-sized stick, maybe 12 feet long, and prop it into the V of another tree, maybe about waist high off the ground. You don't want it much higher than that because you want it to be able to trap that heat, you know, from your body. And then just drape your Mylar blanket over the top, and you can anchor it in with rocks or use your cord or whatever you've got to anchor it down. And then just climb up in there, and you're going to be warm, you know.
In fact, I'm
and if you've got
calling
your,
up an image of a lean-to right now on the screen.
Sure.
The audience to look at so they can see exactly what we're talking about. There's an image from survivalhomestead.com of a survival lean-to right there. They, I know Erv can't see this, so let me describe it to you. They used tree limbs, and it looks like they made a V, sort of like a pup tent, and put branches over the top of it.
Sure. If you've got you know, if there's fir trees or pine trees or evergreen type trees around, you can just use those limbs from it. You lay them in just like you would thatch. You know, put the first row down next to the ground first, and then layer them on top. That way, when the rain runs off one, just like shingles, it goes to the next, it goes to the next, and doesn't go on you. But those are real warm. And then just gather pine needles or leaves and put inside that thing. And you can actually gather straw or leaves and put them inside your clothes between your skin and the outer layer, and it creates a warm air pocket, you know, in there. It's very uncomfortable, but it's not as uncomfortable as freezing to death.
But not poison ivy or poison oak.
No.
Leaves a tree, let them be.
If it's not real cold out, you're probably going to get some ticks and chiggers with those two.
Yeah, but the difference between living and having ticks and chiggers is probably a rather broad line, I would think.
Yeah, look on the bright side. If you get poison ivy or ticks and chiggers, all those sores will give you something to do for the next 3 days till you're found. You just sit there and scratch each one in turn. Probably feel pretty good for a second until it starts itching again.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
so you got your shelter built, and you're probably going to want to build a fire. And fire does a lot of things, not just it doesn't just keep you warm. It's a good psychological thing. You know, you have a fire, you feel comfortable. You know, at night there's all kinds of stuff moving around in the woods. I don't know, maybe you're scared of bears and stuff like that. And even if there's no bears anywhere near there, you're still going to think that's what you're hearing when you hear armadillos and all kinds of night creatures out there moving around. But you want to gather up some wood and get it, maybe even stuff it under your lean-to, you know, because if it rains, you can start a fire with wet firewood, but it's a beast. It's hard to do, and then your wood's going to smoke like crazy. So the drier your wood, the better, you know. And then, you know, build you a little fire. And it's also like a TV, you know. They call it Ranger TV, where I went to when I worked out at Ranger School. They said, hey, change the channel. So you just take a stick and poke it around in there, you know, and get a little action going in the fire. But very good psychological thing. And you can cook in it, you know.
Yeah, yeah. I'm looking at your the photos that you sent us, and I'm looking at the various things that you have. When you're going out on a hike, of course, you want to have certain items with you, just like you would have in your car. You know.
Sure.
I would think it would probably be a real good idea for everybody to have a backpack that they have on them when they're going out for a hike. You know, no matter how far away they're going.
Sure. And, you know, if you just put those, I put five items on there as pocket items. I put a knife on there. I put some cordage. I put a Mylar blanket. I put a Ziploc bag. And then I put a signal mirror magnesium fire starter through the little chain that comes on it.
Yep, I have that photograph up on the screen right now for people to see.
And if you've got all those things, you can make everything else you need. You can make a fishing pole. You can make a fishing hook. Throw a grasshopper on that sucker. I mean, you can make a fish trap in a creek. If there's no creeks around, you can make, you know, a snare trap for an animal. You can take the knife and tie it to the end of the stick and, you know, throw it at something or club things with it. If you've got a good knowledge of plants in the woods, a lot of times you can just eat without even having to, you know, do any trapping or anything like that. But remember, you got 3 weeks, and you'll be surprised at how not hungry you'll be during those 3 weeks. You know, once you get over that first day or two of not eating anything, then it comes real easy. But you do need water. So, you know, the Ziploc bag, you can gather up water out of a creek. It's better if you can boil it, but if not, you just need to, you know, if you don't boil the water out of a creek and you know it's stagnant and it's been sitting there, you need to make sure you are close to a creek, because what will happen is you'll get dysentery and you'll be pooping your butt off, you know.
So you probably want to have a little portable water filter with you.
Well, you can, you know, and I believe in when we were talking about the bug-out kit later on, you know, there's a picture on my bug-out kit. It's a straw that you can buy, and it's basically just a straw with a filter on the end. And you could fill that Ziploc bag up with water and just drop your straw in there and drink it straight out there, you know. And it filters out most of the crap. But, I mean, if you want to go into that how to filter water in the woods without anything right now, we can do that too.
That would be a good idea, because right now we're lost out in the wilderness. We built our lean-to. We got some dry firewood, and we got our magnesium fire starter that everybody should be having with them. We got our Mylar blanket to cover up the lean-to with. We got our knife and our cordage and our signal mirror and everything. And now we're starting to get kind of thirsty, so we need to find a way to filter water, because wouldn't you know it, we're idiots. After all, the show is called Surrounded by Idiots. We're idiots, and we forgot to bring our water filter with us. So we need to try to filter some water out in the field. How do we do that, Erv?
Okay. Let me try to say this in a way to where you can understand it without me having to draw you a picture. All right, so we'll build us a teepee out of 3 sticks, so a tripod basically, and we'll build it about chest high if we've got sticks that long.
Okay.
And we'll spread the legs out at the bottom. Now we can tie the 3 sticks together at the top, just leave them together, and then once we decide to make our teepee, we can just spread them out, and the string will stay where it's at, and they'll spread out. And maybe spread them out so the distance between each is, you know, a foot or more between each of the 3 legs.
Mm-hmm.
And then we need 3 pieces of cloth. So if you've got a jacket and then a shirt on underneath, you may have to take that shirt on underneath and cut it up if you want to filter that water. Or, you know, if you've got a bandana, that's one of the cloths right there. And then really you could probably use 2 socks and a bandana. It just depends on if you want to drink out of water that's been run through one of your socks or not, you know.
Okay.
So the choice is up to you, but you need 3 layers, and you make them about, you know, anywhere from 8 inches to 12 inches above each other, like a 3-layer sandwich with air in between each layer. So on the top layer, now that my fire's been going, the top layer, though, I'm going to take some gravel or some rocks or something that'll strain out large items. So I could take Really, pine needles would probably work. Something that'll strain out the larger pieces out of the, if it's a slimy sludge water that you have to get out of a pond that's stagnant.
Mm-hmm.
That's my first layer. Is going to be the thick stuff. My next layer, I want sand or dirt. If all I can find is dirt, I want to try to find the sandiest dirt I can find. And I'll put that in the second one. Then, since my fire's been going a little bit, I'm going to take as much charcoal as I can get. Try not just to get straight up ashes because it won't work. You need charcoal, so some of the sticks that have been burned already, pull that charcoal off and throw that in the bottom one. And then what you do is you just take your bag or your space blanket is a good water gatherer as well, and you just dump the water in the top. And it'll take a little while for it to trickle all the way down through the third one, and then you gather it at the bottom, hopefully in something cleaner than what you put in at the top,
I believe I found a photograph of what you're talking about.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Well, one of the tricks you can do is you take a Ziploc bag, you fill it full of the murky water.
Uh-huh.
You dump it in the top, and then you turn the Ziploc bag inside out and hold it at the bottom, and now you're catching clean water on the fairly clean Ziploc bag,
Yeah.
And then you can drink it from there. And it might still have some sediment in it, but, if you drink it regularly, it's going to have a lot of sediment in it,
Right.
So that's one way to store water. And then, there's a bunch of ways you can catch water. You can use your Mylar bag and put it over, a green plant, like a little tree, a sapling, maybe, 5 feet tall or so. And you wrap that around there and tie it off overnight, and the next morning when you open it up, there's going to be dew all on the inside of it. And you can either, hold it to where it'll all funnel into a V and into a cup. Might just be a mouthful or whatever, but it's still better than nothing. And that is clean water, You can also build a solar still where you dig a hole, maybe 3 foot in diameter in the ground. You can throw your space blanket over that, put a cup directly in the center or your Ziploc bag directly in the center underneath the Mylar bag or the Mylar sheet. Take a rock and place it on top and then secure that Mylar sheet with dirt all the way around the outside edge of the hole. So looking at it from the side, you'd have a hole that looks like a U. Inside the bottom of the U would be a cup. And across the top of the U, you draw a V and then draw a little circle on the V, and that's the rock holding the Mylar bag in place. And what happens is that when the ground condensates through the day, it releases that steam up from all the moisture in the ground. It goes up, hits the Mylar sheet, and then drips down into the cup. And then at the end of the day, you come pull the cup out, and you might just get barely a drink of water out of it,
But it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and ways that you can make the solar still work a lot better is you can take a bunch of green leaves and put around your cup in the middle. Or you can actually take a leak in there, and it'll purify that water. May not smell too good when you go stick your head in there and get your cup out, but it'll be clean water in the cup in the middle.
Okay. So we've got our water.
Sure.
We've got our water. What about signaling rescuers?
Signaling rescuers. Well, since we already cleaned our water and we still got our little teepee set up there, now we can use our same teepee that we built our water cleaner with. We take off all the layers with the different sediment in them, and right in the middle you'll take 3 smaller sticks and build a shelf across there. And what you do is for your shelf, you want to put green sticks cut with your knife and layer them across to where you've got basically a shelf of green twigs or sapling limbs across there. And why you want to use the green is because it doesn't burn as quickly as, dry limbs do.
Right.
And then on top of that, you'll put a small pile of very dry sticks, and that's going to be your tinder and your kindling for the fire. And then off to the side, you're going to take a bunch of green tree limbs. Not limbs, but, a limb with all the leaves and foliage that's still green on it.
Okay.
Or you can use fir, like a fir tree or a pine tree or some kind of evergreen. And what you do is you light that fire on top of that green shelf, in your teepee. And then you, once the fire's going good, then you throw all that green stuff on there, and it'll smoke like crazy. So there's your signal fire.
Okay, good.
Other ways you can signal if you don't have anything is, like I said, you can just put you could write SOS in 14-foot letters, and when you're making a letter and you need to make the width of it, you make it 14 feet tall and 7 feet wide, so it's kind of a square, and you can write the letters SOS and put those there, and then if you hear an airplane or something coming, maybe light your fire off, then you got SOS there, I suppose you could even burn your SOS. It probably wouldn't be good if you wanted it to be there for a few days, though.
Yeah.
And then, if you still got your little signal mirror that's on the magnesium fire starter, it's even got the instructions on the back. All you do is lift that thing up and look through the tiny hole and find the sun. You look to wherever the sun is, and then you follow it across to wherever the plane is, and it carries that sun's reflection over to the airplane, and then you can flash it up and down. In a signal mirror, you can see it a very, very long ways off. In Afghanistan and Iraq, you can maybe even see those things like 10 or 15 miles away up in the mountains,
That far away?
Yeah, you got to have the sun to do it, though. You can't use it in the clouds, it doesn't work out.
Yeah, obviously.
But, yeah, you can get when you're bringing airplanes into a target and your laser goes dead or whatever, and it's in the daytime, you can use those signal mirrors to mark the spot.
Oh, okay.
When they're flying up at 40,000 feet or whatever, so.
They could see it from that far away?
Oh, yeah, and they're miles away, too,
Oh.
So,
Now, as far as the SOS, obviously you want to have it contrast with the ground. Because if you're just throwing sticks on brown ground, nobody's going to see it.
Well, like I told you before, the way it works is when you build it like I told you, you build it 14 feet long, you build it 7 feet wide, you build each part of the letter, like if it was the letter I, you would build I, 2 feet across and 2 feet high, and what that does is it creates a shadow. So that no matter what direction you're coming from, you can still see it, even if it's exactly the same color. If it's piled snow on the ground, it's still going to create a shadow,
Right.
It's going to create that contrast that you're talking about.
And that's what you want.
Yep.
Okay, well, we've been saved from dying and starving to death in our car. And now we've been rescued in the wilderness.
Yep.
So now we're back home. Whew. We're relaxing and watching TV, but here comes a tornado. We all have to grab our bug-out bags and get the heck out.
That's it. That's right.
So now we need to pack a bug-out bag and the items that we should put in that.
And it all goes back to the first thing I talked about, sir. And that is food, fire, water, shelter, and signal. And all your bug-out bag does is take those pocket items that you got and expands them. So as far as shelter goes, you'd want to maybe put a 0-degree sleeping bag in there. You can pick those things up, $20 to $40. I know like BePrepared.com, those type of places have them fairly cheap. Also, some kind of tent or a, like we were saying, a poncho or a, just your Mylar blanket. That could be your shelter.
Mm-hmm.
So that you'll expand it as far as shelter goes there. As far as signal goes, I would have an actual CB radio, a handheld one. You can pick them up off of eBay for $10, which I bought 4 recently. Just keep fresh batteries in there, and then maybe a set of extra batteries. It uses a lot of batteries, so it's like 9 batteries or something.
Yeah, I'm looking at your pictures. I believe I have a image of a bug-out bag here, if I'm not mistaken.
Sure, it's the one with the helmet on it. It's the one that has the helmet on it.
Yep, there's a little orange helmet. I see, looks like a little all-purpose tool on there, hatchet.
Sure. Yeah, I got that from BePrepared.com too. It's got a hatchet, a cat's paw on it, a nail puller, and a hammer on the other side, So really you could use it as a weapon, to break into a hunting lodge if you were freezing to death, you wouldn't want to do that, if you weren't freezing to death. But in certain circumstances, you might want to use that, or to break back into your car to get in there to get warm. Who knows? But there's all kinds of stuff on there. I don't have the physical picture, but basically you're just going back to that, food, fire, water, shelter, and signal again.
Yep, I see some water purification tablets right there.
Yep. I've also got on there a Sweetwater pump, which is made by MSR, but Katadyn, all kinds of people make those pumps. And then I believe in a separate picture, you've got just a picture of the Sweetwater pump, which is green, and you've got a picture of a Katadyn Pure 06 reverse osmosis filter, which you can get for, if you pay full price, you're going to pay $1,000 for one. But if you look around, you can find surplus ones for $90. And I've got one in every one of my bug out bags.
So every member of the family has one.
Yeah. The only thing is they're 2.5 pounds, which is quite a bit of weight when you start adding up all the stuff in your pack.
Yeah, they can get quite heavy, folks.
Yeah. And then for like water, I've got the Sweetwater pump in there. And then I've also got an IMOX pen, which is just a little, it's got batteries in it. You throw a little salt and water in the top, and it basically makes chlorine to put in your water, so it purifies your water even after you pump it, and it kills everything else. Because believe me, the last thing you want to do is get sick if you're out there on your own,
What's that pen called again?
It's called IMOX, IMOXX, and it's made by MSR as well. But they're all, different people make them. They're also called Steri pens, S-T-E-R-I.
Those are the ones with the ultraviolet light?
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The only thing about them that's bad is, if you get any type of EMP from nuclear discharge or, solar type flare, it's battery powered, so it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But I'm sure you could talk all day about how to shield all that stuff.
Oh, I'm sure that we can. It'll save that probably for another show, or maybe later on in this show.
And the difference between the Steri pen and the IMOX pen is the IMOX pen I can purify, 500 gallons, where the Steri pen only does one bottle at a time.
Ah, okay.
But, just a small eyedropper bottle full of chlorine would work, or, iodine. Just put one drop in there and it, let it sit for 10 minutes and it kills all the crap in there.
Okay. So we got water, we got a tent, we have a sleeping bag, we have a little safety helmet in there.
Yeah.
Looking at the other
I suggest a helmet, when things turn crappy, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, things fall, and the worst thing you can do is get hit in the head and not be able to take cover or something, you're pretty much killing yourself if you get a good knock in the head and it knocks you unconscious. Those little skateboard helmets, you can buy them at Kmart, Walmart for $10, or you can go, pay $100 for a good one. ProTech makes the ones that I got. You also want a pair of goggles, or just good ballistic type sunglasses that won't break, because stuff blows around, especially like in tornadoes and hurricanes. You don't want to get hit in the eye with something. So, a pair of good goggles is a good idea, and a scarf to cover your mouth up. I've got a gas mask on there, but the only time you'd really need a gas mask is if you're anywhere near a volcano. The pyroclastic cloud that comes out of there has little, basically, sand gets vaporized, and I'm sure you know all about it anyway, but those little pieces of glass will get up in your lungs like fiberglass and get stuck in there, and then the alveoli gets all clogged up, and then they can't accept oxygen, for the oxygen exchange. So that's what the gas mask is for.
That would ruin your whole day, folks.
Yep.
That's
or nuclear, but shoot, we're probably all glowing so much by now anyway. We don't have to worry about the nuclear thing anymore.
Yeah, that's our old friend Fukushima.
Yeah. That's all right. Maybe that's the evolution of the human species. Will include 3 eyes and the forehead and all kinds of other stuff.
Oddly enough, I have 3 eyes myself.
All right.
I apologize. That was completely uncalled for. I've got the third eye in the center of my forehead.
Awesome. Well, you're on the camera. I'm not. So.
Well, I'm not on the camera right now.
Oh, okay.
I'm showing your photographs. We've got. I'm showing the one photograph. It looks like one of the bug out kits. There's the helmet, the goggles.
Is it the one with the gray helmet?
Yeah, the gray helmet.
Yeah, that's my kid's bug out kit. That's for a little kid. You know, everything's really small in that one.
Yeah, it looks like there's a little water canteen right there.
Yeah, just an old Army canteen. You can get those things for $1 a piece. And there's nothing in these bug out kits that cost anything really. The most expensive thing you'll see in there is probably the stove in the main bug out kit with the tan helmet. I've got a all fuel. It's called a Vapor all fuel stove. Brunton makes it, and it takes gasoline or diesel or kerosene or white Coleman fuel or any of that stuff, and that's why it's in there.
So a multi-purpose camp stove would be good.
Sure. And then just a bottle of fuel. If you've got one of those, you can siphon gas out of a car or whatever. It's whatever you need to.
And how do those work?
They you just put the fuel in the fuel bottle, and then it's got a hose that hooks up to it, and then you just pump it up like you would a lantern, to pressurize it.
Right.
And it just makes the gas basically turns into vapor and comes up through the stove,
So you can use gasoline, diesel, kerosene, white gas?
Yep, everything. It works on everything.
Wow. And who makes that?
Brunton makes the one that I've got, but there's lots of people make them, And that Brunton one, I think, was a little over $100, maybe $140.
Okay.
And actually, I'll give a shout out to Brunton and MSR. They gave me the stove and the Sweetwater pump and the IMOX pin. I was working at Ranger School as a survival instructor, and I was using those in the class. They gave me a couple of those sets, and of course, I kept one.
Yeah. Let's see. I'm looking for one of these. I see a Coleman multi-fuel stove.
Yeah.
That would be similar to that. Let me a photograph of it up on the screen here, so
Sure.
that the audience can see what we're talking about. That's a multi-fuel stove right there. You see the little pump over there on the left and the fuel tank, and it's got the little burner at the top. It looks pretty small.
Yeah. Smaller the better. That stuff adds up in weight, and it'll kill your back, especially if you're, over 40 and out of shape. That little small bug-out backpack's going to whip your butt, when you go to walking 10 or 20 miles a day.
Yeah. Let me pull this up over here.
And also, I've got there's a Coleman, I believe it's called a Coleman Max. It's a little 2-pot kit. And, you can make probably a bag of ramen noodles in one of the pots and maybe twice that in the other. It's just 2 little pots. And then the lids make the frying pans. Kit's $25 at Walmart or, Costco, either one of those, and or any of the Army surplus shops. And it's a good little deal. And there's space inside it, inside the smallest pot. So I've got a bag of rice in there, some bouillon cubes, and some salt and pepper.
So you've got the food inside the pots and pans in the survival kit.
Sure. And not minute rice either. I got the real rice. Real rice, you can get more in a bag than you can the minute rice, which has already been cooked once.
Right. But then again, it's easier to cook out in the field, too.
It is. But with either one of the rice, you don't even have to cook it. You can just eat it,
Yeah.
Your stomach will rest.
Yeah, and also probably the rice expanding would probably keep you full, too.
Yeah, it does. Rice is real good. I mean, it's a good carbohydrate. Pinto beans is another, That's the basis for my whole stored food plan. I've got bags and bags, 50-pound bags of rice and 50-pound bags of beans. And then I've got all the stuff to make it into whatever else I want, you know.
As a matter of fact, folks, right here in my hands, I have my bowl of rice that I'm having for dinner. When you're having rice, and you could probably put this in your bug-out kit too, is packages of salad dressing. They work great for flavoring rice and beans and everything else when you don't have gravy or that sort of thing. That's pretty good, and I prefer white rice. In fact, to get off the subject just a little bit, I was going to show the audience this before we had you on. But when you're making rice, you need to clean the rice. You need to clean the starch off of it, and it's pretty hard to do because you use a lot of water to do that. Because you got to put the rice in a bowl, fill the bowl up with water, and swish it around and everything. But if you use one of these, this is a flour sifter. This is the kind with the little handle that rotates around like this. It's got a little screen in the bottom. It's got a little piece of wire that sifts the rice. Or the flour. If you put your rice in here and run water through it, turn this thing around while you're doing that, it cleans your rice in a jiffy. A little tip for you there, just a little bit off topic. Now we can get back on topic and try to keep surviving here after the hurricane or the tornado has wrecked our house. We're out in the field. Yep. We have, let me see here. I'm looking at the photographs.
We had our stove, and we had our stove, and we had our pans with the rice, and then I also have a big bag of those power bars again, which, you know, I mean, you're going to get tired after eating them after a while, but they've got tons of protein. You know, you're going to stay alive a long time eating those things. And, I mean, I spent almost my whole trip over my last trip, well, both trips to Iraq, just living on peanut butter packets and, you know, and crackers the whole time. So I know you can live off that stuff.
Yeah.
And you can live off that stuff doing hard work, you know, carrying a lot of weight around and running and being foolish, you know.
Yeah. Let me tell you guys something. Those, don't sell those, power bars, the Myoplex and other things short, because that stuff, Myoplex is designed as a meal replacement, as the power bars are, and those things will keep you going for a long time because they got nutrients and everything else in them. And peanut butter is great protein. It's a great protein source. It's got the oils and fats that your body needs and everything. And I think peanut butter's got antioxidants in it too, so you can keep all that kind of stuff in your bug-out bag, and it's not gonna go bad. It's, you know, designed to be stored for a significant length of time.
And if you keep them in a Ziploc bag, you've also got another bag to use for water or anything else you want, you know.
Yeah, store stuff in. Now, what about safety? You've got your bug-out bag. We've got the helmet. We've got the little tool, the hatchet. We've got the stove. We've got the food, the rice, the pots, the pans. But now the hordes of zombies are coming up over the hill, and they want to take all that stuff away from you.
Well, in that little bug-out bag, I've just got the little, I've got a Walter P.22. It's just a 22 pistol. Oh, it's small, very small. The ammo is small. That's the best thing about 22s. And I always put a lot of faith in 22s. You know, Special Operations Group during Vietnam used them for all their assassination hits.
Did they really?
Yeah. So, you know, they had a Ruger Mark II 22 suppressed, you know.
Right.
And they would basically set up an ambush, and as the group came in, they'd shoot the guy they wanted in the knee with the 22, which is very accurate. He'd fall down, and they'd shoot off all the claymores and kill everybody else, and then walk out and get that guy and take him back to the rear and question him, you know.
Wow.
Or just put one in his gourd, you know. So 22s are real birds. They're really good for hunting because you don't overkill your food, especially small game like, you know, beavers or squirrels or rabbits or any of that stuff. It's just a real good little gun, you know. I've got a Ruger 10-22 rifle, and it's, you know, the ammo's really lightweight and easy to carry, and it's very accurate. So
you can get about 1 million rounds for just a few dollars too.
Yeah, at Walmart right now it's $22 for 500 rounds. So
I see in one of the
for my weight, that's, you know, that's like $500 per, no, it's not that much. I've got 1,000 rounds. I think it ran me, close to $500. So
Right.
they're pretty expensive.
I see in one of the photographs you sent me. I think it's a bug out bag that you have there. It looks like it has several clips
with it.
Pardon?
Yeah, that's just a, if you're going into a situation where security is a big deal and you're the one with the gun that has all the bullets, I guess, that's what that bag's all about. It's called a chest rig, and it's what we used when I was operating overseas.
Okay.
And I believe there's 9 magazines for an AK-47 in there, and then just a bunch of other little small items. A whistle, that's one of the safety items. It's also signal. A fire starter's in there, a knife, some pens and paper in case you got to take notes.
All right.
A compass is really good, unless our magnetic poles move around further to where you're having trouble, finding your way. A map is also a good idea to have in your bug-out bag. A road map, and then maybe a topographic map as well of the area that you're going to be moving through.
Okay. Probably not a handheld GPS because of the possibility of EMP.
Well, you can have it, but, if you look on the bright side, if all of a sudden it doesn't work anymore, you don't have to carry the weight,
Yeah.
And instead of throwing it away, I'll throw it in a trash bag, bury it in the ground, and mark the spot on my map. That way, if I ever needed to come back and get it, I could come back and get it and try to make it work or get parts out of it or whatever,
Well, that brings us to another good subject is actually doing that, putting pre-deploying caches. I know there's a group called ANTS, A-N-T-S, and they do a lot. They're they're not a survivalist group. They cooperate with each other so that when there's, say, a flood in Virginia, all of the ANTS members in Ohio will go down there with supplies and stuff for them. And they do a lot of caching, pre-deploying small amounts of food and supplies and whatnot. How do you go about doing something like that? And is that even a good idea to do?
I think it's a good idea. That's how we, can only carry so much in your backpack.
Right.
You don't want to, a person uses probably 5 to 10 gallons of water a week, depending on what kind of strenuous activity he's doing or she's doing. You can't carry, 5 gallons of water weighs 40 pounds. That on top of everything else you're carrying is not a good idea. So let's say, I'm living out here in Tulsa. Let's say I was trying to get to, I don't know, the Ozarks or up to, the mountains somewhere, maybe out in, maybe down in southeastern Oklahoma. I was going to the mountains. Well, along my route, I might plot a route on a road that I'm going to take in my vehicle if I have to bug out and head down to the mountains. And what I would do is along that route, I would take my truck and bring those items and, just dig a hole in the ground, and I would double layer my gear in trash bags or maybe even those plastic tote bins because once they're in the ground, they don't dry rot anymore when they're, when sunlight is not on them.
Right.
And I'll pack those things completely full, and I'll just bury them in the ground, camouflage the top where it just looks like the ground again, and then mark it somehow, There's a million ways you can mark it. Put a pile of rocks on top or, actually tie a piece of cord to the item, and then after I bury it, keep the cord out on the ground and tie that around the base of a tree or a pole or something like that I know is not going to get blown away easily. And be able to find that stuff, mark it on my map. And then I would think about how far it takes me to walk in a day. Me personally, I can walk 10 miles in a day with my pack and everything on pretty easy. So I would try to figure out by walking 10 miles a day how many days it would take me to get there. And every one of those days I would put a cache where I was going to sleep at,
What, it's kind of a weird subject. It's kind of a weird subject to get into because a lot of people don't think of that. But where would you, say you're going to walk 10 miles a day, where would you go about hiding something like this? How would you dig the hole, prepare it, make sure that nobody else finds it?
I'd do it at night. really, the less people that know about what you're putting in the ground there, the better, because once they find out about it, it's their stuff and not your stuff anymore.
Right.
So it'd be good just to drive out at night, you know, and if you're going to do it on the side of the road somewhere, find a terrain feature that you can find in the day or night. You know, it's always better to get that stuff at night so that nobody sees you doing it. I mean, you're a taxpayer anyway, and there's a right of way along every road, so that's really your land that you're putting it in. So it's not like you're doing anything mischievous, you know.
So we're talking like here in Michigan, the I-75. As you're going towards northern Michigan, it's split, and there's maybe like a 200-foot stretch of, you know, trees, fields, that sort of thing, in between the north and south lanes. You're talking about something like that?
Yeah, I wouldn't put it on off of a freeway though. I would find a 2-lane state road.
Mm-hmm.
And really, if I could find, you know, state-owned lands is what I would recommend. That way you're not poaching on some farmer's field and he's going to come out there and blast you with a shotgun, you know.
Right.
But maybe state parks would be a good one, or a roadside stop. Just pull out there, and when nobody's around, take your stuff and, you know, haul it off to the side there and dig a hole and camouflage it. And now your stuff's in the ground. You don't have to worry about, you know, anything happening. I mean, and if you don't go back and get your stuff immediately, it's always going to be there. You can always go get it, you know. You may even not want to take everything that's in the cache when you're moving through the area. If you end up being on foot or in a vehicle, you just may want to take just certain items out and then put the rest of it back in the ground, you know. You don't, just because you've got a cache doesn't mean when you have to dig it up, you have to pull everything out. You just take out what you need to put everything back. And, you know, things you in there is like medical stuff. Water's a big one because it's heavy. Food. If you've got, you know, just extra shoes laying around that you'd normally send off to Goodwill or whatever, throw them in there. You know, throw an extra pair of jeans and an extra shirt in there. You never know. You might come back
put it in probably in a Mylar bag, right?
Yeah, like I was saying, what you do is you put it inside a trash bag. You seal that trash bag with a zip tie or the twisty ties.
Uh-huh.
Put it in another trash bag, and then you put it in another one. I'd put it in a minimum of 3 trash bags, you know.
Okay.
That way you've got a triple layer on the outside. And like I said, if you've got if you've got those big plastic Tupperware bins from Walmart, put all your stuff in a trash bag, seal it, then put that in the Tupperware bin, and then put that in the ground, you know. That way you've got a heavy-duty box.
That's a pretty big hole to dig.
It's not too bad. I mean, if you're digging in rock, it's not going to work out for you, you know. Yeah. But if you've got actual soil, it's not going to be too bad.
What about utilizing, say, storage sheds?
Yeah, that's good. The only thing bad about storage sheds is most of them are made out of tin.
Right.
And, you know, tornadoes or high winds are going to blow those things away.
I mean, like those places where you can rent a closet or whatever it is.
Yes, sir. That's what I was talking about.
Okay.
You know, even some of them even have cinder block outside, but the roofs are made out of tin or they're just flimsy. You know, those things aren't very sturdy.
So burying it in the ground is still the better option.
Yeah, and the worst thing you have to worry about as far as burying it, what I do is I'd throw maybe a handful of mothballs in there after when I was getting ready to seal it.
Mm-hmm.
That'll keep the bats and all the bugs and stuff away from it, you know. It creates fumes that they don't like.
Now, if you're things
that might flood, you know.
Right. If you are going from Tulsa to the Ozarks, try to get to some safety, do you put different items in each cache, or do you just put the same items all along that path that you're going to be taking?
That just depends on, I mean, that's all part of your planning. Each person's going to be different, you know. I may drink more water than the next guy, you know. Or, you know, some people may put silly crap in there like Cokes or something, you know, I don't know. But for me, I've done everything military since I was, 17 years old, so that's how I do all my stuff. And I would just put, maybe some easy-to-make meals that I didn't have to, do a lot of cooking with. Something fast, that I can get out there and eat quick. Maybe some raviolis, and then maybe even just take a piece of duct tape and tape one of those little P38 can openers on each one. just for redundancy, you know. And then maybe a first aid kit in there in case mine gets. You never know what's going to happen. You know, people may find you out there, and you remember the Little Bighorn?
Yeah.
Yeah, remember when the guy was out there? He was buried in the ground up to his neck, I believe, and didn't have any clothes or whatever, you know, or I don't know, maybe he had clothes, but, you know, it wouldn't be anything for people to strip you of everything you got and leave you sitting there, you know, and if you knew where your next cache was, you could get, you know, a full set of gear back.
Yeah,
so,
I've never, it's just so difficult to envision having to go through that type of a disaster, but I mean it could very well happen.
You know, financial collapse, either people are going to stick together and do the right thing or they're not. And too many times we've already seen it that they did not, you know, and it's bad things like that sure bring out the animal in people, you know. My
money is on the do not cooperate.
Yeah.
Sad to say. And last week we had Cliff High on. I don't know if you heard that, but he's predicting an especially bad winter as an ice age descending upon us. And so you may be moving from, say, here in Michigan down towards Georgia or Tennessee or something like that. So you might want to have some caches.
Yes.
Along the way.
Yep.
And what about group caches? If you're part of a group, I mean,
sure.
You know, obviously you have relationships with people and people that you trust, people that you don't trust. But if you're part of a group, would a group style cache, or would you want to break up everybody's individual stash?
Well, the only thing about doing a group is, number one, the way we used to do it is, you know, when we were operating overseas or just in training or whatever, when we were using caches, we had radios, and you'd send in a cache report. Every time you took something out of there, you'd report it. That way they knew at all times what was still in there.
Mm.
If you had a group using it and you had no communications going back and forth, you might dig the hole up and there's nothing there, you know.
Right.
Or you're dying for water and you dig it up and there's nothing but food in there. So, I don't know. That's a little kind of a touchy subject, but as long as you're all communicating, I think it would be fine. You know?
Okay.
And as long as you put, like, massive amounts of stuff in there, a person can only carry so much, you know, and I don't see,
right.
You know, once the crapola hits the fan, gas is going to get hard to find, you know, and people are going to be footing it a lot, you know.
Right. Riding
like
bicycles.
You know, everybody was walking everywhere or riding the, you know, hobo in the train, so.
Yeah, so whatever you can carry.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, whatever you think will work for you. Just, you know, make sure you cover your butt and, you know, maybe put an extra cache along the way that only you know about, you know, just in case. And I'd put, you know, if you've got some old hunting guns that you don't use, and
mm-hmm.
I don't know what people think is going to happen, or, you know, there's a million theories flying around about Planet X and LNN and nuclear war and just all kinds of bad stuff going around. And for each one of those, you might need something a little bit different, you know. Or if you don't believe in that stuff at all, I mean, you still got, you know, Joplin, Missouri got hit with a tornado and blew, you know, a third of the town away or whatever. You may just find yourself without a house at some point, you know.
Yeah.
So you never know.
So having a cache someplace would probably be a good idea.
Sure, I'll tell you, I've got bins and bins out in the attic in my spare building outside that's just full of crap. You know, if that stuff was in the ground instead, I might be able to actually go use it at some point, because right now it's, you know, if a tornado comes, it's just going to blow it away, or
right.
At some point I'm just going to get, you know, mad and just give it to Goodwill or whatever, you know, to where I might be able to use it if I did the other thing with it.
Right.
Caches is a good idea. You know, it gets your stuff underground and gets it to where you can get at it if you need it.
So put the stuff in 3 trash bags, or maybe a tote bin, put some mothballs in there, and
sure.
Bury it on in there and disguise it somehow.
Yep. Make sure you mark it so you can find it.
Right.
Because I've seen guys do it the military way, to where you have to write this big old report, and when they went in there to find somebody else's, they couldn't even find it.
Yeah.
So it's real easy to bury something and not be able to find it. If all else fails, mark it plainly, and if somebody gets it for you, somebody gets it before you.
Right.
Better to be able to find it, when you need it, instead of not find it ever, and then nobody get any good out of it.
Yeah.
So I thought in there, I've got shoes laying around that, old running shoes that I'm not going to wear anymore. I mean, if society breaks down like, 10% of the United States thinks right now, shoes are going to be the hardest thing to come up with,
Going to be hard to find.
Yeah, and you can say, well, I'll just make me some moccasins or this or that, but, a good pair of shoes is hard to get.
Yeah.
Hard to come up with, whatever, unless you want to be, pull them off of dead people or whatever, and then you'll probably never get that smell out of there.
Yeah, my wife is probably going to kill me for saying this on the air, but I believe that I have saved every pair of old shoes for the past 20 years.
I'm the same way. I've got all kinds of crap laying around the house that I don't need.
Even if they're most of the way worn out, boy, I'll tell you what, you could still wear them for another couple of months if you had to.
Yeah.
No matter what. Well, let's get on to first aid kits. That is one of my favorite subjects is first aid kits. I love my first aid kit.
Alrighty. Most of my training with first aid kits, and you'll probably have to fill in a lot here, most of my stuff has been trauma, combat trauma.
Right.
Trauma with people training and, doing very dangerous things as far as mountain climbing or parachuting or just walking in the woods with a lot of weight on your back in the dark with just a pair of night vision goggles, which aren't very good. I don't know what you know about them, but you can't see that well through them. So it's always been broken bone or, gunshot wound or things like that. So my first aid kit probably doesn't have the same thing in it that a lot of people's would,
Yeah. Sadly, I think pretty bizarrely when it comes to first aid kits because my first wife was has worked in the healthcare industry all of her life, so I know what to pack in a first aid kit. As a matter of fact, while you're describing what's in your first aid kit, I'm going to go upstairs and get mine so that I can show people what we're talking about.
Sure.
So, folks, for next minute or so, Erv is actually going to be hosting the show. This is great. You're a big-time radio show host now.
Right here.
Okay, take it away. I'll be back in a minute.
All right, folks. I've got two different first aid kits. I've got a paramedic bag, which is a big old thing that won't fit on your back. It's hard to carry and stuff. And that paramedic bag basically has all the stuff that comes in it when you buy just a paramedic kit, online or whatever. And I've augmented the kit with a few things. I've augmented it with a field surgical kit, which you can buy maybe $19 online. Every Army surplus sells them. Some come with suture kits. That's the one I've got, and then some don't. And then I've also got two IV bags, and what I do is I take 500 milliliters IVs, and one saline and one is lactate ringer, and I put my gloves on there, and I put all the tubing in there, and I put two separate catheters in case I have to use the second one, and then I just put a piece of surgical tape around it, and also put my my tourniquet in there, and then I make just a little kit so that once I pull that surgical tape off, everything's right there that I need, so if I need to use those IVs, I can. Make sure you don't have that stuff in there if you don't know how to use them, because it just takes up space and it's heavy. And also if you go and look around online, you can find antibiotics and not any type of painkillers or anything like that, but you can get antibiotics and like Zofran, anti-nausea pills and things like that. You can buy them all at pharmacies overseas. Legally without a prescription. So I loaded up on amoxicillin and ampicillin in case I needed that. And then I also got Zofran, which even kids can take I got the 4 milligrams for the kids, so that if there's any crazy shaking going on and people are getting nauseous, you can take one of those pills. And one of the worst things if you have kids, one of the worst things if they get nauseated, sick, they'll start throwing up, and then they'll get dehydrated, and they can die from dehydration. And it's real hard to get an IV on a little kid, especially all my IV needles are 18 gauge, and they don't work very well for little kids like that.
Yeah, that's pretty
So
big.
I've got that type of stuff, and, just Band-Aids and stuff.
As a matter of fact, I have a couple of my vomit bags out right now. I have returned with my first aid kit. I've got some vomit bags here
Awesome.
that you can see on the screen. I've got, your basic surgical tools, which is a good pair of scissors. I've got a suture removal kit, that sort of thing. I'm not going to show that. A couple of gloves.
Hemostat. If you ever, accidentally cut or rip an artery, you can, get an arterial bleed going, you can throw that hemostat on there and it'll stop that bleeding.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well, I've got these surgical gloves. You can get these in different first aid kits. You can get them at a lot of hospital supply stores. They come in little plastic bags like this. I've got four pairs of surgical gloves right here in their own little bags.
Steri strips is another good thing. I've got a whole bag of Steri strips.
Yes.
If you're squeamish and you don't want to put in sutures, you can use those Steri strips instead.
Yeah, the Band-Aids. This is, in case what people are wondering what one of these Mylar blankets looks like, this is one right here. This is from that railroad, the Canadian Pacific Railroad first aid kit. And that's what it looks like right here. I'm not going to open it up, but you can see that it doesn't weigh anything. Weighs maybe an ounce, and this thing's big enough to cover up a full-size adult, because that's what it's designed for. And of course, some of the things that I carry in mine are probably different than what you might. I've got abdominal pads here. I've got some deep wound compresses. I've got triangular bandages. I've got inflatable casts. Of course, I've got, this is for when somebody has a heart attack or something and you have to give them mouth-to-mouth. This is a little mask that goes over their mouth with one-way valves so you can breathe for them. Instant cold compresses, alcohol, as well as saline solution right here. You can, that's basically contact cleaner, but it's saline. So it's fairly pure. You can put that stuff in your eyes without hurting yourself. That's something that a lot of people wouldn't think of. So what else do we have? Our first aid kits, Erv?
Well, I was just telling all the folks out there in radio land that, I've got a paramedic bag. I've gone through all the training for the paramedic stuff. And, I've added some things here and there, like, I've got kids' tri-minute cold medicine and kids' chewable Tylenol and things like that, to break fevers and stuff.
Right.
And then I've also got my trauma bag that I keep on my, actually on my pack, on my big pack that I carry around. And while it's not there, it's in my car in case I come upon a wreck or something like that. And what's in it is a lot of Curlex, and that's that deep compress that you're talking about.
Right.
You pack a wound with it, and then I've got a bunch of those cravats, which is the large triangular bandage that you can wrap up stuff with.
Yep.
I've also got a pair of trauma shears in there, which you should have. They're $1 something. It's probably $2 with tax at any AutoZone, Auto Parts Store, Parts Plus, or any of that. Trauma shears, you can cut through anything with those things. They're scissors, It says it'll cut through a penny, which it will, but it dulls the crap out of them if you cut pennies with them. But have one of those and everything. But basically just blood stopper kit, anything that'll stop blood from coming out. Now, one of the problems you have with, I went to EMT school and all that. When you go to EMT school, they just tell you how to stabilize a patient until you get them to the hospital or life flight them. But in a disaster situation, and you're trying to triage large groups of people, nobody's going to the hospital,
Right.
You've got to find a way that you can stop the bleeding, and then you're going to have to change those wounds, change the compresses off those wounds. You're not just going to be able to send them to the hospital and that's it, You need to, if you don't already know, you need to take some classes or read up on the internet on how to clean wounds and how to dress them properly until they can heal up enough to where you don't have to keep compresses on them. And then, you're going to have to spend a lot of your bandages and things like that trying to keep it clean. So, any type of bandages you can buy in bulk. I bought 3 first aid kits off of Sportsman's Guide, and I believe each one was $29, but it's completely full of gauze bandages, I mean, it's the best deal if you're just trying to go for bulk of gauze bandage. It's got other stuff in it, but
right.
That's the best of it. And I bought 3 of those, to supplement my first aid kits with in case there's a, mass casualty type of deal going down.
And that can happen anywhere, folks. It can happen just about in any neighborhood.
If you've ever driven down the road at night, a drunk driver drives out of his lane and hits 3 cars, and if you know anything about, medicine, you're there, and you're doing it, whether you're certified to do it or not,
Yeah, it's basic first aid. Everybody needs to know basic first aid. It's, it's kind of strange because if you know first aid, it's like it's no big deal, but you don't realize how many people really don't know it.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's...
But you might think you know first aid, and then you come up on a car with a guy that's missing an arm, and you're like, what in the hell do I do now? You know what I mean?
Tourniquet.
Yeah. What do you put the tourniquet on? You have to just pack the wound and hope to God he don't bleed out, and if you've got a suture or some quick clot, I don't know if you know what that is, but, a lot of the bicyclists and stuff use the quick clot, but that's the stuff it's made for, arterial bleeds that are where they're going to bleed out, It just takes a very short time for a person to lose all the blood in their body if they've got a artery that's burst open.
Well, you could put a plastic bag over a stump too, and tape that up around it.
Yeah, it doesn't. If you've got an arterial bleed, though, it's going to bleed out inside the bag. You've got to find a way to either pinch that off,
right,
or if you've got a hemostat, you can just clamp it on there, and then it's not going to bleed anymore, and then later on you can figure out what you're going to do with it. Or you can take that quick clot and dump it on there, but the quick clot, the bad thing about it is if you get it on your fingers and then you accidentally rub your eye or your mouth, it'll burn the crap out of your mouth and it'll kill your eye. It has so much surface area of charcoal or whatever that stuff is, it'll absorb all the fluid out of your eye and make your eye not work anymore,
Yeah, so you
and
make sure you wear gloves when you're doing all this stuff, folks.
Yeah. And I have to tell you, I've been in a couple of times where something happened and I never even thought to put the gloves on or the mask to breathe into, that was just me. I was just trying to take care of business, before things got out of hand as far as stopping the bleeding and things like that.
Right.
And, I never even thought to put the gloves on. So if you can remember that, that's good. It protects you and them, So, but I just never did,
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to think when you're in a situation like that. You're basically reacting.
Yep. And you may have to, it may come a time where you got to make some tough calls. There may be somebody that, given the time and resources, you can stop and help them, maybe save their life, but you're just going to have to pass them by and go to somebody with lesser wounds, that's going to take less time to fix. But, this life here is just a short drop in the bucket, so it's not like, as long as you think on those terms, you don't have to worry about, well, if they die, they're just, they're going back to recot and come back down as a whatever, you know.
Right. So, you know, and this is probably not a venue to ask this question, but, I mean, you've been in the field, so theoretically you've been trained on this, but how do you make that decision? How do you make the decision, you know, if you got a half a dozen people that are wounded? I mean, how would a civilian make that decision? Do you pick the kids first? Do you pick the adults first? Do you go by who might have what abilities?
No, well, you have to look at what's, you know, if you've got somebody that's probably going to end up bleeding out if you don't get them to a hospital, but there's no hospital to get them to, find somebody else who can help, you know, maybe even one of the other injured persons to make them comfortable until they pass, you know. You've got to move on to somebody else, you know. And, you know, it may come down to making those tough calls, and you've just got to live with it, you know. But you can't let it upset you because it'll just ruin the rest of your life. You know, you can't think like that. You've just got to think that, you know, the Creator put you in that situation to get the most out of it or whatever, and you're doing the best you can, you know. As long as you do the best you can, that's all you can do.
That's pretty something there. That's something that a lot of people don't think about, and you know, I think you need to put that in front of your own face. I mean, what happens if, God forbid, a tornado goes through your neighborhood and all your neighbors are laying around scattered hither and yon, and you're the only one with a first aid kit and a bug-out bag? Yep.
Well, you know what? You can get all that through training. I mean, you really can. Otherwise, when the Marines go to, you know, Fallujah, or, you know, we hit An Nasiriyah and a lot of guys were getting shot up and stuff, that muscle memory that you gain through training, that's going to save you in those instances, because your brain doesn't function when stuff like that goes down.
No, it doesn't.
What happens is your body goes through the motions of what it's been taught over and over and over again, you know. That's why it's so important. That's why the Marines and the Army and the Air Force and everybody, that's why they train so much. Train. Well, why would that guy train? He's already learned it once, you know. You train so that when you get in that so stressed out situation that your brain can't function, that your body functions in lieu of your brain thinking. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, that's the best thing you can do, is just train yourself to know how to handle those situations as best you can. That way, when you go in, you're just working and you're not thinking, you know, and that's the best way you do it.
Where would a civilian go to get good training, good first aid training? We're talking about first aid training, folks.
Yeah, go to your local YWCA, YMCA. Get up with the local Boy Scout troops. You know, those kids, they learn a lot there. Maybe go out and be a adult helper one day that they're going out to the hospital or learning first aid or something like that, you know. But there's all kinds of stuff you can do. Go to the VFW or the American Legion and see what they have to say about it. You know, they may be able to direct you.
What about the Red Cross?
Say again?
What about the Red Cross? Do they have first aid training?
Yeah. Yeah, they do. American Red Cross, and you can even volunteer with those guys, you know, and kind of get your feet wet a little bit, which I suggest you do. You know, go to your local EMT courses, 30 days, and then I know a lot of places offer it at night. Go and take the EMT course. You know, a lot of places you can get, you know, tuition assistance, and they'll just pay for it because the state needs so many certified EMT people or whatever, you know.
And a lot of, from my personal experience in this field, a lot of the ambulance services in your local county have a ride-along program where you get your training and you ride along with them in a what they call a third seat, because there's and then basically all you're doing is assisting them, you know, handing them bandages, things like that. That's a good way to get your feet wet too, and that helps pay for your training.
Sure. And that's called desensitizing yourself. So when you do see a guy with his head missing, it doesn't stun you so bad that you can't function. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's probably the hardest thing, is psychologically overcoming, holy cow, what am I looking at? I don't even know what I'm looking at, you know? there's somebody with all their intestines strewn out along the street or whatever, and you can't even find their legs, and you're just like, you know, you get into that danger, Will Robinson, danger, and your brain just doesn't function anymore. It just kind of shuts down, you know. And, you know, it's those things you got to be able to override the shock, you know, of seeing that stuff. So.
You have to find some way to desensitize yourself to the shock of seeing wounded people.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, because, you know, a lot of people will go out and get themselves a first aid kit. The first time one of the kids burns their fingers or something like that, they go into shock themselves and don't know what the heck to do.
Well, let me tell you something. The kid thing is a very touchy subject to me. You know, I went over, I served in 4 different combat scenarios overseas and that type of thing. And I come back, and the first time one of my kids gets a bleeding wound that won't stop bleeding, I could not think straight. You know, I just could not. My brain shut down, and all my training went out the window. You wouldn't believe it, you know. And, I got so mad at myself, you know. I eventually got everything jump-started back again, but, you know, for maybe 30 whole seconds there, I just sat there, you know, with my hand over the wound going, what I do, you know. And here I've been trained, you know, almost as much as any medic ever has, you know, and shoot, I couldn't figure it out, you know.
Yeah.
But then something clicked, you know, something jump-started my system back up, and then once that spark hit, then I was on, you know, I was back into muscle memory for the rest of it, but God bless, you know.
So essentially you have to try to stand back from the situation and think it through.
Well, yeah, you have to detach yourself from the situation, period, you know. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to function within it, you know.
Is there a trick to doing that, or is it just something that is gained through training?
No, just like I said, just training. If you do it over and over and over again, then when it comes time to do it and your brain freezes up like that, your body will just go ahead and do it for you anyway.
So what we're saying here, folks, is people should get them some type of first aid training besides having a first aid kit, because all the trauma bags in the world aren't going to do you a bit of good when you go into shock yourself.
Nope.
Okay, well, that was a depressing subject to talk about.
Let's go into something more fun.
Yeah, let's go on to my next favorite. We can finish up the show with this, because, man, oh, man. I am just,
hey, you know what?
This is depressing. I might cut my wrists right now just to alleviate myself of this. Holy cow.
What do you do in this situation? I just run off a cliff.
Yeah.
Then you don't have to think about it. YU-55 did not play onto the earth today at 5:30 my Central Standard Time, so that's good.
Yeah, that's good. And in fact, we got some people talking about the YU-55 right now. Holy cow, it's huge. Well, yeah, it's a big rock. Of course it's huge. And you're looking at it through a telescope. What about, let's finish up the show with communications.
Sure.
Because I am a big shortwave radio guy. I love shortwave radio.
Let me tell you what came in the mail today. It was on my doorstep just before I punched out to come up here and drop the kids off.
Okay.
So this whole time I've got all kinds of radios. I've got ham radios. I've got, FM radios. I've got CB radios. And I've got a couple of the emergency band, NOAA, the Eaton radios,
Right.
I've got a very small one that I keep in my pack, and then the larger one I keep in my vehicle, and one I keep in my hidey hole in my house we hide during tornadoes,
Mm-hmm.
The little hand crank jobs with the solar panel.
Right.
But today I got me a Voyager, and I'm real excited about that. I haven't even got to play with it yet. It's still in the box. But I've been wanting one of those for a while, and I'd like to have one of the Grundigs too, so I don't know.
Yeah, the Grundigs are nice.
What do you have?
I've got my mainstay. I've got a couple of different shortwave radios. I have the, and I can't remember where I got it, so I can't give you the website address. But I have the, and Erv probably has seen this before. It's the pocket-sized shortwave radio that they hand out to the State Department personnel. It's battery operated. It has AM/FM shortwave. It's got a little LED light on it. Telescoping antenna. You can plug earphones and everything into it. In fact, it comes with earphones. It's a digital tuner. It's about half the size of a cigarette pack.
Yeah.
And it's very sensitive, and it's the same one they hand out to State Department people. So if they get caught in a sticky situation, they can at least monitor the shortwave and the AM/FM.
Yeah.
And then I've got an old Hallicrafters tube style shortwave radio.
And what is that? Is that like a 10 meter ham or what?
Oh, I think it goes from 2 to 10 meters, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's I'm trying to pull up a picture of it right here on the show for people to see. It's an older style. Don't try to talk and type at the same time. It's an older style tube type shortwave radio. It's in fact, there's my model right here on the screen.
Receiver only or a transceiver?
It's receiver only.
Okay.
There we go. I'm going to throw that up on the screen right here. There, now everybody can see what my Hallicrafters shortwave radio looks like. It's actually designed to be used with a transmitter also, because there's a standby switch on it. But that's my favorite radio of all the radios that I have.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, because it you know, a tube radio, you just can't beat it for being just the sheer survivability of it in a. I mean, if there's an EMP, the tubes in it are going to survive, whereas transistors won't.
Sure. Yeah, and anything that's hand wired like that, you know, it doesn't have any solid state components at all. It's going to be fine.
Publish this one.
I was in the service. We used, you know, HF high frequency, which is basically, I would say it's ham radio, but it's not, because it's got a ham radio that's not even in the frequency range, but it's 1 megahertz to basically 28 megahertz, you know.
All right. So
but I will say one thing about that, like the solar waves we're getting, or the, you know, all the solar activity, well, it kills HF. You can't talk worth of crap when the solar cycle's real high, you know.
Yeah.
It jacks up the way that, you know, the way you get a Nimbus bounce off a stratosphere, or ionosphere, I guess. It jacks it all up. But I like HF. I'd love to have, you know, a military-grade HF radio again.
So are civilians allowed to broadcast on high frequency?
You've got to have a license, or you can just do it. I didn't say that. That's not illegal. We are not promoting any type of illegal activity against the any federal communication rules or regulations. Now, hell, it won't be 2 days, and you won't have any rights left on there anyhow. So you better enjoy what you got. You know? Yeah, what the hell? It doesn't really matter one way or the other. No. What about what are those little personal radios called? The GMRS radios? Yeah, just the little, like the Radio Shack or the Motorola radios. Is that what you're talking about? Are those an FM frequency? They're all VHF. They work on the, basically they're like a cell phone to the citizens bands. They just chop those frequencies up, and then, you know, that's your frequency 1 through 10 or 1 through 20 or whatever. Are they any good? And yeah, they're pretty good. You know, it's line of sight. If you're down in a draw, you know, and there's a mountain between you and your buddy that's only 500 meters away, you're not going to talk to them, you know. It's a ground wave, which means it travels across the ground and over and under and all that good stuff, you know. But, you know, I think the handheld CB is probably the best bet if you're trying to be cheap and all that, because you can buy the antenna that just sticks on top of your car with a magnet. But that one works anywhere, you know. I mean, it's not that heavy that you can't carry it with you, and it's got a long piece of coax on there, and you can just throw that thing up in a tree or whatever, you know, and get a good line of sight. Right. You want to make we should explain what we're talking about.
antennas, especially CB antennas for cars, have are what are called a ground plane antenna, where some of them use the body of the car as the ground plane. In other words, to assist them in transmitting. And what you want is a self-ground plane antenna. Is what we're talking about here. Now, so you have to be careful when you buy. When you're purchasing one of those magnet mount antennas or one of those small CB antennas, that it has its own ground plane built into it, because otherwise it's going to be useless.
Well, it's not useless. I've been all over this, and in and out of HF is really bad. If you don't ground the radio, and it's got a grounding post, if you complete the circuit and ground the antenna, people say you can't fault. You can. You just lose a lot of the output gain on it if you don't have it grounded. But really, if you just had a small, if you have a CB radio, you just take one of the bolts on it and just loosen it up and put a wire on it, off the frame of it, and then just put a stake in the ground and put that on there.
Yeah.
You can pee around it or put a little solder around it, and it grounds it really well that way, too.
Yeah, a little ground stake.
Yeah. But I've also got it's called a Wuxun, I believe is the name of it, Wouxun.
Uh-huh.
It's ham, but it works in the 400 megahertz range. And it also works in VHF, I believe around 136 megahertz. Maybe it's 100 to 200 megahertz range for the VHF and UHF.
Mm-hmm.
And then, 400, which is also UHF, but it's a ham radio is what it says, though, so,
well, let's explain to people what the different frequencies are, so that they can understand what I understand what you're talking about, but I know the average person, 2 meters, 10 meters, 4 meters, VHF, what in the heck are these two clowns talking about now?
Yeah.
First, they're trying to stop what was left of somebody's arm from keep them from bleeding to death, and now they're talking about radio frequencies that I don't understand.
Yeah, you might have lost some listeners. I'm sorry. I can ramble on for days about everything. So.
Me too. But hey, you know what? I enjoy it, and it's my show. So there you go. Yeah.
Well, the military's idea of VHF, UHF, and HF aren't the same as the civilian ones, unfortunately.
Okay, well, let's stick to the civilian version of what we're talking about.
You're going to have to go there because I'm not familiar with all the military. The civilian stuff. I've only been out for a year, and I haven't been doing a lot of work.
All right. Well, CB radio works on the amplitude modulation band, which is the same as AM radio. The radio that you listen to in your car, right?
Yep.
Amplitude modulation will bounce off the atmosphere. You can bounce that off of the atmosphere. They call it, in CB lingo, they call it skipping, so that you can use a relatively low-powered radio to talk hundreds of miles away. Yep. And it's similar to some of the ham frequencies. In fact, if you were to purchase a export CB radio, and I believe there are some places where you can legally purchase this and be a U.S. citizen. This export CB radios also, I believe, have the 2-meter band built into the radio. I don't know if Erv has ever seen those and know what they're referred to.
If I weren't sitting in my truck in the parking lot of the school, I could find you. There's a radio that you can buy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's set up, when you buy it, it's set up on CB band, which is 22 to 24 megahertz and all in between. There's certain frequencies for each band, 1 through 20 or 1 through 40.
Right.
But this radio, if you pull the panel off of there, there's a bunch of little basically little punch-out pins there. And if you set it up right, there's 5 configurations for it, and it's exactly what you're talking about. You can set it up where it'll work for a lot more than just 40 channels, you know what I mean?
Right.
You can basically set that thing up to work on like 500 channels within the high frequency range, which is 0 to 30 megahertz, you know.
Yeah, these are common radios. They're, a common export style of CB radio that you can do this with. Some of them actually come with the frequencies on the front panel. So all you got to do is flip a switch, and you're broadcasting on the ham radio band.
Yep.
Because I believe in Europe, you can you don't need a license to broadcast on some shortwave frequencies from your vehicle.
No, you don't. In fact, when I've worked, I've done bilateral training overseas with recon units and stuff like that. And the you'll be on your military, HF, which is a ham radio, AM, like you're talking. And all of a sudden, you'll get people calling in on CB and talking, in Spanish or whatever. And you're like, what the heck? I'm trying to transmit here,
Right.
So then you have to go to, either roll to a different frequency or come up with a different plan.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I understand. We're kind of getting off topic and into the bushes here now that we've covered all of the topics.
We better recover. Yeah.
Well, we're just about done with the show anyways, and communications is highly important, especially if major disaster hits. So you're recommending a regular handheld 5-watt CB radio.
I am. Yep.
With a good external antenna.
Yep. And you can make one. I mean, you can go on the internet and look it up. It's not that hard.
Yeah, anybody can make a decent antenna. It's not that hard. We're talking. You got to remember, folks. You got to remember the CB radios. It's an AM and amplitude modulation. It's an AM radio. It's very similar to the shortwave frequencies. It's just a little bit off of the actual licensed shortwave frequencies, but AM radio and shortwave and CB radio, they all exist right in that little spectrum there of amplitude modulation. So building an antenna for one is not that hard. All you have to do is really look up the instructions on the internet, right?
Yes. And it's as simple as just cutting a piece of wire to a certain length. Basically, the frequency divided by 236, it gives you a quarter wave antenna, and you just throw that sucker out on the ground, and you got an antenna,
Yep.
Very simple.
Very easy to make. It's not that hard to make.
Yep.
So I believe we've covered just about all the subjects that people need to know about. They can survive being stuck in a snowstorm, getting lost in the woods, coming across a car wreck with a guy with no arm, having their kids bleeding, I guess, going into shock, communicating in the after times, and so apparently we've all survived the asteroid hitting the Earth.
So far, there's always tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow, because you never know which day this thing's going to come flying by. Because now we're getting 100 different stories from these clowns.
Yeah. Oh, well. If nothing else, we'll kill ourselves just through ignorance and everybody blowing all their money, and borrowing more.
Stupidity.
Yep.
Yep, and those people are idiots, and that's why we call the show Surrounded by Idiots.
Now, do you have some web links that they can go and look up some of the places where some of this stuff is posted?
Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. That's the project that we are going to endeavor upon is getting some good. We're going to take all the photographs that you sent me, and we're going to have those up at the website. And the show's going to be up on YouTube, so people will be able to listen to the show and see the photographs and the images and everything. And we're going to start to get together a good set of links for survival tools, survival tips, first aid kits, supplies for first aid kits, communications, these magnesium fire starter things. You can get those just about anywhere on Amazon. You can get them for a couple of bucks. They're not that expensive. The little shortwave radios, the crank radios, everything we talked about tonight, we're going to have links up. on the page on the website for that.
Sure, and I can send pictures of all my radios and all that stuff up close too, if you want.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Sure, folks, we're doing what's called this production stuff right here live on the radio. It's amazing. We're doing all of the production stuff. We're getting together some sources. Erv is going to send us some photographs of all of his radio equipment so we can see what exactly a retired recon specialist has. Is that the proper term to use for you, Erv, is a retired recon?
Yep, recon Marine.
Recon Marine.
Yep, not a very good one either, just kind of an old fat one with gray hair.
Well, I didn't say this earlier in the show, and please forgive me for not saying it, but thank you very much for your service to the country. We all appreciate it.
You betcha. And I'd like to give a shout-out. It's almost the Marine Corps birthday on the 10th. Happy birthday, Marines.
Yes, there we go. What's the proper response? Hoorah?
Hoorah or Semper Fi or I don't know.
Okay. Well, you're the Marine. We're going to rely on you for that.
Sure.
So I must say that it has been a very interesting and informative show. I think so anyways. Hopefully the audience feels the same way. We didn't get a lot of questions in, so I believe that means that everybody was listening to what we were talking about, and apparently we covered all the subjects properly because nobody asked many questions. There was one last topic. Somebody did ask a question about animal bites and snake bites.
Clean them the best you can. If it starts turning red, you're screwed because, that means it's getting infected.
What about that old trick that we see on the TV of sucking the venom out? Does that actually work?
Yeah, as long as you don't have any cuts in your own mouth. But if you've got a cut in your mouth and you suck the venom out, you just took it into your body, Best thing to do is, just get a tourniquet on that thing, try to clean it out the best you can, and then, cover it. And then get on a series of antibiotics, maybe a Z-Pack or something, will cure most, snake bites and, like brown recluse and things like that,
Right. I had a rather bad infection from a spider bite about 10 years ago. I spent some time in the hospital from it, so it's nothing to mess around with.
No, you're going to lose a lot of meat around that hole, too,
Yeah.
And you may have to cut that sucker open and scrape that crap out. I mean, that's what they do at the doctor's office. So maybe buy a book on, field medicine without a doctor around or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Ragnar Benson used to have a lot of books out. I don't even know if he's still writing or still even alive, but that's an author I would suggest looking up on Amazon.
What was his name? What was his name?
Ragnar, R-A-G-N-E-R, Benson, B-E-N-S-O-N, I believe.
Okay. We will get links up to that on the website too. Might take us a couple of days to get all of these links and everything together, folks, so bear with us. We are working as hard as we can, and I believe that has brought us up to the top of the hour. Okay, Ragnar Benson. Okay, our one of our producers has the name up on the chat right now, so people can go and look them up. And I believe we're up at the top of the hour, 9 o'clock. So it's time to end the show. Do you have any last words for the audience, Erv, before we let you go?
Semper Fidelis.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you for me.
Yep, we will. I'll give you a shout here in a couple of days, and we can get together and get all this information up for the folks to take a look at and read. And Erv's music from his fine band will be featured on SETV over the next, forever. You coming out with any new songs lately?
Always.
Always. Very good. How many, you guys have any albums out?
Yeah, there's about 10 recorded albums, but we've got one up on iTunes, and if I thought somebody might want to buy one or shoot, I could just give them the stuff for free if they'll email me. We can get more up on there.
Okay. Good enough. We're going to get your songs up on the show during our streams and see what people think.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Don't forget when you start going on tour and everything, and you're a big jet setter, don't forget who got you your first publicity here on the big show.
You got it.
So don't forget your old buddy Bill Zam.
I won't.
Okay. All right, Erv, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it. I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to wrap up the show and set up the show for tomorrow night for folks. So, Erv, I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
And I'll talk to you in a couple of days.
All right.
All righty, bye.
Bye. Good night.
Yep. Ladies and gentlemen, that was our good friend, retired Marine, Erv. He's a big-time musician, rock and roll. I've heard a lot of his music. It's very good. We're going to be featuring that here on the stream over the next, forever, because he's graciously allowed us to start using his music. Tomorrow night we'll go back to the usual routine of just sitting around while I complain and yap about things that are bothering me and for an hour or so, and bringing you the news of the day, news that we feel is important, and we are preparing to make our stream even better if that's possible. So, as always, drive carefully out there. Remember, when a car hits a car, that's an accident. When a car hits a child, that's a tragedy. Drive safely. My name is Bill Zam. Thank you for showing up tonight. We certainly appreciate it. This show will be up on YouTube probably tomorrow, and you can watch the rebroadcast of the stream starting right